Funding for NEOtropolis has been provided by the following.
Hello, I'm Lester Lefton. Kent State University is proud to sponsor NEOtropolis, a program that looks at the forces that impact the region. Kent State is one of those forces. As a center of educational excellence and as an economic development engine, our efforts at Kent State have a powerful and positive impact on the region through research and development, the arts and innovation, and preparing our graduates to compete in the global marketplace. I hope you enjoy the program, and I invite you to learn more about Kent State University.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, supporting transformational ideas that promote informed and engaged communities.
Hello and welcome to NEOtropolis, the show that brings you the stories about the forces of technology, globalization, and diversity, how they affect our lives right here in Northeast Ohio. I'm your host, Luke Frazier. Tonight, call me the breeze. Lots of wind whips through Northeast Ohio. We'll visit one of the largest wind turbines in the state, talk to a dentist that uses wind gusts to drill your cavities, and talk to the man responsible for capturing wind down at Progressive Field. All this in comments too. NEOtropolis is blowing in the wind. Come harmonize with us. Tonight's episode is Call Me the Breeze. Joining me now, NEOtropolis contributor Stacy Shelton. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Excellent. So tonight we are talking about energy.
Yes.
Alternative energy, wind energy. You know, there's a lot of examples of wind energy in Northeast Ohio.
Right, like those wind farms that they're talking about.
Wind farms like out on the lake. Well, it's still the study phase, right? There's not really, there's money being put towards it, but it's not really an actual thing yet.
Not yet.
What we have, though, and tonight we're going to see on the show, is we're going to bring together a large business and what they do, a small business and what they do, and then the ball field.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good. We had a question out there for folks to respond to. Did we? What was it?
It was, what kind of green energy affects your day-to-day life, and what do you notice most about the developing green industry?
Okay, now you out there, text us, 440-345-6745. So have we heard anything this week prior to the show?
We have.
What do we get?
So Troy talked about solar panels and solar energy. His dream is to solar panel the entire house.
Like heat, water, and everything, even with solar?
Like everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Very cool.
Anything else we heard from on the street?
We did. People talked about hybrid cars a lot and just the whole concept of renewable energy. People are excited about it.
Right.
I think there was some study that somebody brought up the amoebas and being able to do things with that. It's all kind of crazy stuff. Don't ask.
Is that like the biological something?
Yeah, right. Just
stance.
Weird.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll hear some stuff during the show too.
We will.
And let's see. We do want to hear from you. So tell us what part alternative energy sources play in your life. Maybe you work in the field or drive a hybrid car. Tell us what you think. Text us 440-345-6745 or go on to neotropolis.org, Facebook, any of that. So Stacy, we will hear from people and hear from you a little bit later.
All right. I'll see you later.
All right.
Be part of the conversation. Follow us on Twitter at NEOtropolis TV and on Facebook, YouTube, and Google+. When you visit neotropolis.org, check out the archives and sign up for our e-newsletter.
First up tonight, let's take a trip out to Euclid, about 1.1 miles from Lake Erie. While there's been a lot of talk about wind farms on the water, this huge turbine sits on dry land, doing its part to provide clean energy. You can fill up your tank with gas, you can generate all the electricity you want from fossil fuel, but according to some people, the future is all about wind power. So we're here with Seth Mason of Lincoln Electric. Seth, how are you this morning?
I'm fine, thank you.
Excellent. So obviously right behind us is a turbine that's even a little taller than you.
A little bit, yes.
How tall is it?
It's 279 feet to what's called the hub, where the nacelle is, and when a blade passes over the top, it's 443 feet.
And you were describing to me just a bit ago how wide, the diameter. Tell us.
The blades themselves are about 50 meters, so as a circle, it's 100 meters across, which is larger than your typical football field, including the end zones.
So you're telling me if I'm at the tip of one blade and I look across, it's longer than a football field?
If you would, yes, directly across from you.
What about the weight?
Each blade's about 24,000 pounds, so you got 72,000 pounds in blades, and then the hub is 55,000 pounds. So you add all that up, including that machinery up there, you got just under 400,000 pounds. The tower itself weighs like 400,000 pounds, so there's 800,000 pounds sitting on the concrete.
You know, that makes me think of, here is that massive weight, and yet we're trying to generate energy from something as ethereal as the wind. How does that work together?
The wind has got actually a mass to it, and when you increase the speed of the wind, the energy increases. So when you hit, typical for wind folks, they think in meters per second. So as you hit 3-4 meters a second, you start making power. By the time on this machine, when you hit 12 meters a second, you're making 2.5 megawatts of power.
So one of the neat things about technology is that this huge big wind turbine, 400,000 pounds or more, you can control it right here from a little screen, a little touch screen. Tell me more about this.
In the upper left, you have the direction of the machine. It's training into the wind. Do you hear that? Yeah. See, the wind's over here. The triangle's the wind and the blue is the nose. And it's going to bring the nose over to where the wind is. Safety lies in the blades, knowing exactly how the blades are positioned. So you'll see each blade pop up, and it'll rotate the blade 90 degrees to know and test that knows blade position. And any time that you want to shut one of these off, you turn any one blade to that 90-degree position, it'll stop the machine. Oh, okay. And they all have their own control. So this is like a fifth-generation machine, and this is one of the things they've learned to be even more safe, is to have individual control of the blades, and any one blade in the off position will stop you.
So we're here in the base of the whole thing. How many feet of concrete did you say?
There is 2.3 million pounds of concrete, and it goes down 12 feet, 56 feet across. And then the dirt is piled on top of it, and that's called a foundation base.
Tell me, Lincoln had great plans for this or great hopes for this. It's been almost a year since you put it up.
Yes.
Is it meeting expectations?
Actually, I'm impressed with, at a given wind speed, we get the energy that we expect. So from an engineering standpoint, it does exactly what it's supposed to do. So if you look at a given month, you expect a given wind speed. If we exceed what we thought, we exceed power. If the wind itself is low in a month, then our power's low. So it exactly follows the power curve as engineered. So yeah, I'm impressed with that aspect.
Yeah, so the developers are happy with how its ratios out.
Yes, exactly.
Well, you know, some critics would say, well, gee, it's almost like a vanity project because is it really going to pay back its investment? How much did it cost to make it?
The total project, touching the ground, doing all the foundation, about $6 million. And this project was special in that we used ARRA money. It's the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act. It was part of the stimulus package. So in this case, we had about 7,700 construction hours, and we had about 2,000 engineering hours. So we had to bring in architectural historians, and we had to look at the earth, if there were Indian bones. We had to do studies on whether or not it would bother the neighbors. So there was added expense so that from a social standpoint, we didn't bother our neighbors.
Is it more like just a symbol for Lincoln Electric or a symbol for the community to have this kind of wind energy?
You know, across the community and at work, it's been pretty amazing. A lot of people, and no matter where they go, if they have a Lincoln shirt on, people bring up the wind turbine. That's the first topic in almost every case that comes back to me. Yeah. And in fact, the matter is boaters have found it to be a unique landmark for this end of Lake Erie. They describe where they're at relative to this machine. And this is interesting from that aspect because if we were going to go in Lake Erie, this is kind of a test setup as far as that goes, for aspects of being in the lake.
What was the most fascinating part of the construction project for you?
Actually, the logistics proved to be very fascinating because you take a tower piece that's 14 feet across and then you put it on a truck. It doesn't fit under anything. The wires are in the way. The railroad underpasses are too short. It really becomes a Byzantine affair. The route that you have to lay out to get your parts delivered is not what you might expect.
Yeah. And once it was on site here, how long was the construction process?
About 4 days, and 1 day was windy. So the doing the foundation work, waiting for the concrete to firm up is the long aspect. But when you have the crane crews here and the parts on hand, it goes pretty quick because it's bolted together.
The wind tower serves as a physical symbol of Lincoln Electric's commitment to renewable energy.
This power goes only to the plant.
We have a situation where all of the output of this turbine goes to the plant, and a wind developer typically would be selling his power onto the grid and be receiving generation payments. We're avoiding generation, distribution, and transmission with every kilowatt hour. So our situation financially is better than a typical wind developer.
And what percentage can it actually meet the power needs of the plant?
In our main manufacturing plant, we're going to use between 50 and 60 million kilowatt hours a year. We expect to do 5 to 6 million kilowatt hours a year. From the beginning of the year, we're at 3 million, so we think we're on track to do that in our first full year. And so we'll do about 10% of the power in that building. In fact, on a Sunday, when the plant is down to 3 megawatts of draw and it's windy, 2.5 megawatts from the machine, we're nearly all of the power on a windy Sunday.
Yeah, so at this point, the turbine takes care of Sunday energy needs, but but it may be more some time before it does for weekdays too. Thanks to Larry Baker for his hard work on that piece, and thanks to Lincoln Electric for additional footage. Turning now to a concrete example of consideration of policy and alternative energy resources, I'm joined by Amy Hanauer, Executive Director of Policy Matters Ohio.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me first, what does Policy Matters Ohio do?
We are a policy research institute, and we're dedicated to figuring out how we can have a more prosperous, equitable, sustainable, and inclusive Ohio. And we think all of those things go together. So we do research, media work, policy advocacy. Your listeners can find us online at policymattersohio.org.
Great. So it's across a broad spectrum, but tonight I wanted to ask you about the energy policy that kind of gets talked about and gets considered here in Northeast Ohio. What are you involved with there?
Well, the funny thing is that in a lot of ways, these things go together. I mean, if we actually want an equitable and inclusive Northeast Ohio, investing in renewable energy is, I think, a big part of that. So we've done quite a bit of research looking at federal, state, and local policy that can generate renewable energy products, that can generate projects, and that can encourage efficient home construction and building construction.
Yeah. Well, so where does policy come into that? I mean, if we have market forces, or we have, things that are favored by some industry over another, where does policy come in and how does it affect it?
Yeah, I mean, if we really, the way we got to the traditional fossil fuel economy that we have is through policy. We've sent a lot of policy signals to make fossil fuel inexpensive, to get that fuel to market. If we want to transition and diversify our energy use, we're going to need some policy signals to make that happen. Yeah. And that's the only way we're going to get to scale.
I think it sounds like intentional, like having to be intentional about this approach instead of just, come what may kind of, right?
That's right. I mean, you're not going to get to renewable energy because people like it or because customers want it. You're really going to need to make the prices in the market kind of signal that.
Yeah, I think how did you put it before? It was that policy drives the market, or how did you put it?
That's right.
Yeah.
I mean, and just the clip that you just listened to, he talked about using Recovery Act funds to put in place that wind turbine. Well, renewable energy products take a little bit more upfront costs, and so we're going to need to do some things to make those competitive. But the irony is that down the road, they actually cost less to sustain and move forward.
Right. Well, tell me right there then, is part of it a symbolic value? I mean, does it mean something when we look around and see that there's other ways of generating energy than our fossil fuel? I mean, is there some of that almost emotive level to it?
Well, maybe, but I guess I'm more practical than that. I mean, right now, we spend about 10% of our state gross domestic product on energy, and a lot of that money leaves the community, leaves the state, even leaves the country. So if we had renewable energy products, we would be reinvesting that energy back and that money back in Northeast Ohio. So it really makes a difference.
Is there something to be said, though, for when you think of a supply chain for building alternative energy stuff, is that in a reality yet in Northeast Ohio?
Absolutely. I mean, the Recovery Act funds, but also our state advanced energy standard are two of the policies that we have already put in place that are already generating jobs in Northeast Ohio, they're generating money in Northeast Ohio, and they're reducing our costs.
Yeah, I mean, that's it. When you get into the financial aspects of it, it can get very expensive very quickly. I mean, what did he tell me, $6 million? I mean, it can just go like that. So how do we weigh against competing needs and competing policy areas?
Well, the irony is that right now, using traditional fossil fuels, like you hear a lot about tax policy and people don't like taxes. Well, manufacturers spend 7 times more on energy than they do on taxes. So if we could reduce what manufacturers were spending on energy, think how much more they could invest in their workforce, think how much more they could invest in new product development. There's all kinds of ways you could spend that money.
Excellent. Amy, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Very enlightening stuff. Thanks for being here, Amy.
Great. Thank you.
Going to the dentist is a drag, even if you drive your clean energy hybrid car to your appointment. But check out this dentist in Northfield. He's using wind power to work on your teeth.
As early as 5000 BC, people were using wind power to travel down the Nile. In 200 BC, they were using simple windmills to bring water into the villages. Well, now it's 2012, and Dr. William Davidson is using it to help strike fear into the hearts of many. Okay, maybe not, but he is using it to help fill your cavities. So how exactly did you decide to use wind energy in your practice?
Well, several years ago, there was a big promotion about wind energy in Lake Erie, and I started looking into wind energy because I thought it would be something nice to have here at the practice. The problem that I found is most wind energy has a very large turbine, which you can't put in an urban environment like this in the center of town.
Right.
So I had to find something that was compact enough to fit on the property and not generate any wind noise. And I came up with the circular wind turbines here that work just beautifully.
So was your impetus, was it a cost savings, or was it some kind of a statement, or what?
It was more of a statement, something that I wanted to do here, and the benefit to the practice in terms of cost and publicity is what I was looking for, because everyone sees them as they go past. It's fantastic. You can't miss them.
Okay, so you've been using wind power for 2 years now, you said?
About 2 years ago I had them installed, and it's been a boon to the practice ever since. It's worked out real nicely.
So what kind of results are you seeing? Is it just strictly marketing and advertising results, or are you...
Well, we're generating energy every day from it, and so that's the bottom line, is we are doing something to help with the energy generation here and reducing the carbon footprint of the building.
Okay, so this is the room, and this is something fancy. I see gauges and whatnot. What is this doing?
Well, what this is our power monitor for our wind turbines. And what it does is it shows the amount of power currently being generated and the RPMs, how fast each individual unit is spinning. And we can check one unit or the other remotely. And so right now, no power is being generated, because if we look at the wind speed, it actually has to get up to the green area, which is about 200 RPM, before it starts generating any electricity.
What happens when it generates? Are you saving it somewhere, or are you just pulling it directly?
When it starts generating electricity, it's fed into the building, and we use every bit of it as it's being produced. Even at nighttime, when we're not here, the night lights and the other building power, the alarm, everything draws enough current that it will use every bit of the energy.
How much, what percentage would you say is being run off of wind energy?
We're probably using something like 10% of our needs off of the two wind turbines here. Each of the two turbines will produce 2,000 kilowatt hours per year of energy on average.
And where was the company?
The company is actually that makes this is called Windspire. And Windspire makes these out of primarily recycled materials up in Michigan. And for the employees, they employ primarily displaced auto workers. So it's green right from the beginning.
Look at that, caring and sharing, multiple layers happening there.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So there you go, a modern-day practical application of an ancient power source. Now, if only they could figure out how to fill the cavities without the drill, that would be progress.
Well, I don't know if green energy makes going to the dentist any easier, but at least you're doing your part to save the planet. Now down to the ball game, as in the Indians' home at Progressive Field. If you've been there this year, you may have noticed a funky-looking corkscrew wind turbine perched atop the upper deck. The guy who's responsible for developing that alternative energy screwball is Cleveland State professor Mohamed Rasheed, who joins me now. Welcome.
Thank you.
I couldn't resist the screwball, the picture thing.
Perfect name.
So tell me, you're involved with developing this. What was the process like?
I started with working with prior art, with other design that other inventors have worked on, and actually I was working on a design that I was responsible to reduce to practice. And when I was working on that, I realized that there were some shortcomings, so I went back to the drawing table and I started working on this system in 2005 and 2006. That was the inception.
You know, I'm fascinated by that, because you think of these things that come to fruition like this special shape of a wind turbine, but you never really think about how long it took to get there.
That's right.
Yeah, so what would be a day like when you started? What were the questions you asked?
The first question was, when other people try to do the same design, it was difficult to manufacture them. Because there is a famous saying, you can always make one of anything. The difficulty is to make many of the same thing, cost effective. So those were some of the challenges that we had, and I tried to resolve those challenges.
Yeah. So there you were, you had started developing it, and you had a team of people at Cleveland State, is that right? How long have you been at Cleveland State?
25 years.
Wow. So you've seen a lot of growth down there, too.
Definitely. A lot of buildings and a lot of...
Do you have a new building now that you've done this great work? Do they name a building for you?
We are hoping for building for engineering, maybe in a few years.
So I'm going to ask you the same thing that you saw in this Lincoln Electric piece, which is there a symbolic value to this beyond the kind of the energy that it can yield right now?
In my opinion, definitely. One of the reasons that I did this project was to create some sort of awareness, because in northeastern Ohio we have all sorts of industries and the infrastructure which is needed for this kind of...
Meaning what?
Meaning like steel industry, plastic industry, fiberglass industry. And with the radius of 60 miles from Cleveland, we can make A to Z of the turbine that you saw at the Lincoln Electric.
Wow. Okay, so that really is about the economy right here in Northeast Ohio.
Definitely.
Okay. And so what other, people see it at Progressive Field. I mean, I go there to watch the ball game. Maybe it's boring. Hopefully it's because the Indians are winning by a lot, but maybe not. So when I look at that, what am I supposed to get from it?
See, if you do internet search, you realize that in 1888, Mr. Charles Brush had a wind turbine made for 10 kilowatt power rating. And if you look at it from that point of view, Cleveland is a pioneer in large-scale wind turbine meant for electricity. Wind turbines have been in place for millenniums, but not for electricity. So Cleveland could be the birthplace of large wind scale wind turbines, and that's the reason that I think it has those type of values for the new generations, kids who are going to the ballpark and kind of learn to think out of the box.
Yeah, and it brings that back to what we talked at the top of the show, which was when stuff is around me and I start considering it and it becomes part of my environment, it just builds a foundation for the future, right? And where do you see the future of your specific work going?
Right now, as a faculty member in a university, I have done the R&D portion of this project, and we have shown that it works and it generates electricity at a viable price and a viable level. So at this point, some industries in the community should step forward and step up and at least try to investigate what it is, do some sort of due diligence, and try to see if we can replicate this in some other places.
So there's that practical application, the translation. We were out at NASA Glenn, and it's all about where to take that space stuff and apply it practically to benefit Northeast Ohio.
That's right.
And it sounds like that's exactly what you're trying to do too.
That's exactly.
Thank you so much for being here.
Sure.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me.
So we'll be talking with Dr. Rasheed, hopefully again, when he can tell us how many corkscrew turbines are now atop every sports facility in Northeast Ohio. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so Stacy, we had all kinds of interesting stuff, big business, small business, ball field. Yep. What did you find fascinating about anything in particular?
I was fascinated by the dentist. I thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
What a great way.
You're that kind of weird person who wants to go to the dentist? Is that what you're...
No, but I would like to play with the drills that were...
Play with the drills. That's what Erin was doing in the piece. She was sneaking in the drills. So did we get some people who weighed in tonight on this question?
We did. What did
we hear?
We had Jeff, who talked about people who signed up for classes for green building technology, so like heating and cooling, those types of things.
So he himself was part of this, or he's going after work that way?
He's going after work that way.
So obviously that's a part of his life, right?
Yeah, that's good. And then Bob talked about that every appliance and everything that we shop for now, that's a consideration. So he talked about, with the cost of hybrid vehicles coming down, that was a good thing. So the hybrid vehicles came up again.
Yeah.
And I actually had one more if we have time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so Earl talked about some wind turbines in Delaware that were able to power an entire research center and also some homes. So they're leveraging that energy as well.
Well, let me ask you what I asked our guests, which is, as part of this, the symbolic value of, us kind of saying to the world or saying to other people, this is what we want to be about, clean, renewable energy.
I think so, and I think that people are starting to catch on that it's a great way to give back and that we want the earth to be around for a little while.
Yeah, true enough. Thank you, Stacey. I
Thanks.
appreciate you being here. And that's really all from us tonight at NEOtropolis. Thanks for joining us. Keep in touch. Now remember, during the week, you can go to neotropolis.org. You can go on Facebook. You can post there. You can put pictures there. You can suggest stories. We love to hear from you at any time with suggestions or comments about how we're doing, whatever it is that you want to tell us. Join us next week when we visit the Mechanobiological Lab at Case Western. That's a hard thing to say there. Mechanobiological at Case Western, and take a ride in a car straight from the future. So remember, you can even text us during the week, 440-345-6745, Facebook, neotropolis.org. I'm Luke Frazier. Good night from NEOtropolis.
Funding for NEOtropolis has been provided by the following.
I've scored major motion pictures. I've written music for cartoon shows. I play in a band called Devo. So while you may not know my name, you probably know my music. And if my music moved you, thank the place that moved me, Kent State University. Because if you've seen my work, you've seen their work. My name is Mark Mothersbaugh, and I'm a proud alum of Kent State University.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, supporting transformational ideas that promote informed and engaged communities.